Welcome to episode 6 of Failure is Progress, presented by Sweat Factory CrossFit. We are your hosts, Coach Keith and Coach Frankie. Thank you for everyone that has been listening, following, and subscribing. If you haven't already done so, please leave us a review. We are uploading new episodes every week. Also, just a quick reminder that our next competition is going to be Festivus Games presented by Sweet Cup Chef. That's going to be coming up on October 21st, 2023. And if you sign up before the 23rd, you will get your free t-shirt. So make sure you sign up for that. We got teams signing up every day, and you don't want to miss out on your free t-shirt.
Nice. The 23rd of September, by the way, is the deadline.
Did I not say that? I did not say that.
It's all right. We got it. How are we doing today? We have a special guest. We would like to present our wonderful GM, Jennifer Rice. Welcome.
Woo. It's a pleasure to be here, guys. I've been listening to you every week. It's nice to be part of the show. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. So Keith and I last week were, after our podcast, we do a little brainstorming session, and we were talking, and we said, you know, who would be perfect for this is Jen. We should talk with Jen about this. We should have her on. And basically the conversation came up of whether it's better to have a good coach or an effective coach, right? That was kind of the gist of what we got into, and we can break that down even more. But we figured having a GM like you, who is always keeping an eye out for these kinds of things, it would be good to bring you into the discussion. But it seems like once we asked you that question, you decided to kind of run with it on your own, right?
Kind of, because I love the concept. And I would like to point out to the listeners that nobody here thinks there's a right answer. You know, it's kind of a thought exercise of balancing these different ideas. But the real answer is we want both. We want all of our coaches to have both. But it's, like I said, a fun thought exercise. So I took this to mean if you had to choose between someone who can advance your technical skills and someone who really made you feel seen and respected, which would you pick? And Keith and I had some preliminary discussions on this, and I noticed right from the start, we kind of went in different directions. You want to elaborate on what your direction was?
Yeah, I think like you mentioned earlier, all three of us can agree that you can't have one without the other. To truly be a good coach, you can't build relationships and not get people results. And you also can't build super really good relationships and also be lacking in the results area. I think I said the same thing twice. That's okay. You get what I'm trying to say. But in my own personal opinion, I think the results or building the skills, like you mentioned earlier, is probably the number one thing that we should be focusing on as coaches. And then we're using the relationship building to aid in that purpose. My not favorite saying, but a saying that kind of rings in my ear all the time is nobody's paying me to be my friend. They're paying me to solve a pain point or a problem for them. So at the end of the day, as coaches, I personally think that we should be getting people results, but building the relationship side of things and making sure people feel seen and working on the mental aspect is one of our very, very powerful tools that we can use to not only motivate us intrinsically because we care more once we get to know people, but also just to have that trust between athlete and coach.
Yeah, I think one thing that you said before we started recording, which was a really good way of saying it, there's a gradient, right? Mm-hmm. There's a nice big gray area in between. You have great coaches that may not be the most personable, may not be the most fun, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. They're probably all about the business part. They just want to get things done, make sure you're getting results. They want to maximize every minute you're in the gym to make sure that you're progressing for whatever your goals may be, knowing that your goals are probably to compete or, to get to a certain level of your athleticism that you haven't been to before. And then you have those other coaches who maybe they aren't as I'll use myself as an example. I don't technically know as much as you do. Obviously, you've got way more experience than me. Jen has way more experience than me, right? But what I'm good at is I'm a good listener. I know how to listen to my athletes and see what their goals are and help them progress towards that direction.
And everybody loves Frankie.
Everybody loves Frankie.
And Again, we should play to our strengths. That's what we're good at, or that's what we should be good at. But I think it also makes sense, like you said, you love to, what was it that you said that was your favorite saying, or it wasn't your favorite saying, but it's a saying that you like a lot? Oh, you don't get paid to be your friend. You get paid to deliver results.
Yeah.
I like to say that I like to be a really good listener. I think in order to be the best at what I'm doing in any realm where I'm working with other individuals is to listen to them, right? And if I have someone come in who says, hey, look, I'm not competing. I just want to lose some weight. I work out 5 days a week and the scale hasn't moved. I want to listen to that person and really get on base with what their nutrition is like, what their specific goals are. Why do you want to lose weight? Why do you want to physically be lighter? Maybe the fact is you want to lose fat, right? That's what happened with me. I wanted to lose weight until I realized I didn't. I wanted to lose fat, right? And that conversation comes up because from so many years of being brainwashed with our parents and our ancestors, it's always been weight. It's always weight. It's always weight. And I think for a lot of people, it's kind of eye-opening when you explain to them what that's like. You're not trying to lose weight. You're trying to build muscle and you're trying to lose fat. Yeah. That's going to help you get to the goals that you actually want.
I'm glad you went down that segue because, asking Keith, his personal take on which coach is the quote, I've got air quotes here, people, sorry, those who can't see them, the better coach, right? Is it the skill advancement or the relationship building? And he's going to put a little bit more stock in the skill advancement, recognizing that relationship building is a tool to get that. That sound fair?
Absolutely.
All right. So now you've got Frankie saying hey, I needed someone to open my eyes. Now I want to do that for other people where I want them to recognize it's not weight they're trying to lose. It's fat. We're trying to get them mobile, trying to build muscle. It's not just the number on the scale, but they're not going to listen to what you say if you haven't built that relationship.
Of course.
So to Keith's point, it's a tool that we have to use. I do take the slightly different approach to this and say it is the tool to use. Because if we don't build the trust, and they don't respect our opinions or our scaling options or whatever it is that we're trying to present to our athletes, that's going to undermine our ability to enhance their skills. So yes, I do want coaches who are bringing a value add, who are constantly growing their own educational repertoire and have more progressions and skill advancement opportunities for their athletes. But number one is building that relationship so that everything else that comes after that can work.
Yeah. And I mean, we talk about this a lot as well, right? CrossFit is community, period. And I've gone further into that saying it's not even so much CrossFit. In our case, it's Sweat Factory, right? Our community is very different from anything else. I'm positive of that. There is a very family-like atmosphere that we have in our boxes, some different than others because we have 4 locations, but I think in each box there is that sense of being able to come to your community. The story that me and Keith have of one day where I messaged him and I was like, man, I'm not in the mood to work out today. And he's like, sure, just come hang out. Just come and chill. And I was like, just come and chill at a CrossFit gym. Okay, sure, whatever. I'll give it a shot. And I went over, instantly felt better, was hanging out. Jake was there. You guys know I love Jake. Jake made me feel better. Next thing I know, I'm under the barbell doing power cleans, which I don't do great, but I did them a lot better after that afternoon, right? And it was all about the intention of going to just hang out, and I think that's one thing that a lot of our members know and love about our boxes is that feeling of acceptance, that feeling of community, that feeling of camaraderie. And that's a beautiful part of all of this. I think in and of itself, that's probably the biggest draw to a CrossFit gym is being with like-minded individuals and with individuals who are going to suffer beside you. I had that conversation with one of our members this morning, Lori. I said, there's something about suffering alongside somebody else that brings you closer. It happens in the military all the time. You go to the military, don't know anybody near you, but as soon as you do 1,000 pull-ups together, all of a sudden you're family.
Your brothers, yeah.
That's just kind of how it happens. So I love that aspect of this.
And the community is so important. So I'll back up a step and share what I did coming into this podcast, we talked about this a bit offline. So naturally, I wanted data because that's how my brain operates. I said, which is better? What does the community think they want? So there is a Facebook group called the Women of CrossFit. Sorry, gentlemen, you're not invited. We won't approve you to enter the group. But this is for the ladies out there, this is a global platform of women all over. So just like we have our Sweat Factory community of athletes, this is a woman specific, and believe me, we talk about some things on there that the men don't need to hear about. But when I threw this, I threw this question out there to the community at large, and of course it's a biased population because this is women only, but they did say that 67% of them are looking for that super highly effective coach, and 33% of them are looking for that feeling safe, feeling seen, feeling that sense of community. But there were some interesting points that people raised up. Some of them said, it doesn't necessarily matter which coach I get because the athletes are going to give me what I need. So they were saying if the coach was very technical and not very personable, that's okay because I've got my community. I've got the other athletes who can cheer me on, and I don't necessarily need the coach to do that. And I thought that's a very valid point because we were approaching this as a standpoint of what you need to deliver to be the best, which is more important than the other. And of course, with that caveat that they're both important. But that hadn't actually dawned on me when we initially had the prompt.
Right.
That we are not doing this on our own. We've got a whole community full of people who are rallying together if we've done our jobs right and we've created opportunities for them to engage with one another. Then I think some of that can happen on its own.
So what I hear you saying is if we build a strong enough culture, we don't have to be nice. No, I'm just kidding.
You can start pretending starting Monday.
I don't know if you can build the culture without being nice, but I like
it. But once it's built, then we can just be like, forget all that. No, that's a really interesting perspective that I didn't think about either, that if someone new is coming into the culture and they see that you've built a culture of community that supports each other and everything like that, at that point, what you're buying or what you're paying for from the coach is just the results. And if you don't get the personable side, I guess it's okay because you're still getting some value out of that. Now, if you're not getting either, then we got to have that conversation. But
that goes back to Frankie's example of how all of this started, which I don't think you've dove into on the podcast.
What started?
The prompt for this about your friend going to a CrossFit gym.
Yeah, I mean, what prompted it, I was just chatting with Keith about a friend of mine who stepped into a CrossFit gym. And I guess my best friend isn't really the most active person. He's not very athletic, hasn't always been, but decided through seeing me and all of my positive results, he wanted to give it a shot. So I told him, hey, there's a couple places near you. Go check them out and go for your free trial class and see how you like it. And when he walked into that one gym, I'm not going to name them, he spoke to the owner and he said, hey, I wasn't really feeling it, man. Like the owner of this box didn't seem all that enthusiastic. He didn't seem very excited to work with me. He didn't seem very anything. He was just there. He was just taking up space. And what I said to him was that doesn't necessarily mean he's not a good coach. He may not even be the coach. He may just be the owner. But it negatively affected him. His perception was to go, and he obviously needs to feel welcomed. He needs to feel greeted and brought in, which is something that we like to do, right? I remember the first time I walked in and you were in the middle of a workout and you jumped out and I was like, whoa, she's on energy drinks, and you were excited and happy and,
You wouldn't like me on an energy drink, by the way. It's ugly.
But yeah, I mean, that's what prompted the whole conversation. And so I said to Keith, what would be our preference? What would be my preference? What would be your preference, in a coach? Do you want a coach who is inviting and who is welcoming and who is going to sort of give you that, break that barrier, right? Break that barrier, because most athletes, I'm not going to say all, but I will say most, because I do believe most, come to the gym and they have this idea of what CrossFit is. They've heard of it through friends, probably haven't heard the best things. And they're taking this chance, they're taking a step, right? And I think that making them comfortable with being uncomfortable is important. I think having them come in and have a positive experience is very important. So in the case of my best friend, he went in, he didn't have that barrier broken. He just felt like he was walking in and kind of doing it because he wanted to, not because somebody was trying to embrace him, and I guess there's a good part to that, right? He didn't feel somebody was trying to sell him on anything.
I mean, in a way, right? But we're all in this because we see the value of CrossFit. Like, we see the life-changing potential. We've all experienced some of that life-changing potential. So your friend in this instance, he didn't feel warm. He didn't feel welcomed. He didn't feel like part of the community. He's probably not going to go back, at least not to that gym. He might go to another one. Maybe it'll feel different. But now we've failed him as a CrossFit industry. Like, if that person had walked into our gym at Sweat Factory, I would feel like we really failed on delivering the opportunity to that client. So here's where my opinion as a coach is, yes, the personable attributes are super important, but my perspective as a general manager, it just emphasizes that, because now we don't get to deliver our product. We can have all the skill advancement opportunities in the world. We have the best, most knowledgeable coaches. But if that client, that athlete, that person who has goals and desires never steps back into our box again, what good is any of it?
Yeah, I mean, and I'll use an example that is very personal to me, my wife. The first time my wife went into the gym and had a trial class, she didn't have the greatest experience. It was different. It wasn't because she wasn't welcomed, and it wasn't because she didn't feel welcomed. It was just her needs weren't listened to enough. And that's probably on me because I'm her husband. So I didn't listen to her needs enough. I didn't treat her as an everyday athlete. But she didn't feel like she wanted to come back. She didn't get the workout she wanted. She had a perception of what CrossFit was from me watching it on TV all the time. She had a perception of what everyone else was like, which was that everybody was super fit and everybody was, super athletic and they knew how to do everything, and she was lost. And then she came in, she was lost and didn't have the greatest experience. And over time, it was about 45 days, give or take, from that class. She gave it another shot because she saw our daughter having such an amazing time. She saw me having such an amazing time. And she was like, okay, I want to do this. And actually, I will give credit to someone, Zoe. She watched Zoe at the competition and how Zoe embraced all the other girls. And she was like, that's okay. I see what the community can be like. And so after that, she came back and did her foundations, and a lot of those guards were let down because it was just a one-on-one with me, and I was able to really take her through the steps, and now she's able to come to class and feel more comfortable.
And that goes a lot into mindset. Like, that speaks a lot to your wife's capability to say, I tried it, I didn't like it, let me try it again. Right. But this is a very special case where she was still immersed in our culture. Yeah. She was going to the competition. She was seeing your daughter. She was seeing other athletes and probably thinking, I'll put some words in her mouth here, because I would think it, if I had a daughter, I would want my daughter to grow up to be like Zoe. So she probably saw that and said, you know what, I want this for my girls. This can be good. Let me try it again. And so kudos to your wife for coming back, for being brave and giving it another go. Most people don't stay exposed to the sport to know what those other benefits are and to get a fresh perspective on it.
And to that point, the coach that was coaching that night, he's some guy. I don't know who it was that night, but the coach that was coaching that night, if we're talking about, delivering a fun workout or delivering an effective workout, I think she did get the stimulus that was programmed for that day. Probably a little bit too much stimulus, but she definitely got the stimulus. So it wasn't a very effective workout, but we didn't get that relationship building part in there. And I think that hurt her experience more than the actual workout. I think if she had got that experience, that personal connection, it wouldn't have mattered how sore she was. I'll say sore because she was pretty sore. It wouldn't have mattered how sore she was because she had such a good time. It wouldn't have felt so overwhelming because she would have come back and whatever guy that coached her would have been able to help her out with some of that recovery. And it wouldn't have been a thing to where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so lost. I feel whatever the case is. I feel embarrassed or whatever. And now I'm super sore too. Like, this is the worst thing ever. It would have been a thing to where it's like, that guy was super cool. I can't walk. I probably should go back and take another class rather than I'm never going to do that again.
Well, again, I think it was a unique experience. She didn't come to us the same way most athletes do. She didn't have that initial class with, finding us on her own, doing some research on her own. It was more, my husband's in CrossFit and I'm going to go give it a shot. And she came in and she kind of expected certain things. A lot of people come in with different expectations, but she had specific expectations because of my involvement in it. So it was different. It was also the two of us coaching her. And it was, I think, one of the first classes after I got my L1. So I was very particular in trying to catch certain things. So it was just a perfect storm of hurt for her. But I'm proud of her for coming back and getting back into it. She's really enjoying it, and she's really enjoying when she gets to do it with Maddie. So the two of them together is a lot of fun. What do we got next?
Next up, I wanted to ask Jen, what do you look for in a coach as an athlete as opposed to a general manager?
I love the timing of this question because, as in CrossFit, we play new sports, right? That's what we're culminating for, is this idea that we're playing new sports. So I've picked up swimming. Never thought I'd say that. But I've tried a couple different coaches now. And there's something that definitely resonates with me, certain coaches that I lean toward. And one of them is that they've shown some kind of expression that they see my potential. We all have potential in some capacity or another. There are some coaches who I met on this swimming journey where they didn't say anything to me. Not good, not bad, not indifferent. There was just no dialogue.
They were just there.
They were just there. And I watched them with other athletes. Actually, you were at a particular practice where you asked the coach very humbly. It was the best approach I'd seen as another athlete, where you said, hey, if there's some kind of cue you can give me, I'd be very receptive to that. I'm trying to improve. And their answer was like, we go sign up for personal training. We don't have time for that here or something. But they're in that same amount of time that she said that, she could have said, hey, reach a little bit longer with your arm, extend that stroke, period. End of conversation. There was a cue that could have been beneficial. But we were sort of relying on other athletes in the pool to give us cues. That was not effective coaching. There was no relationship building. There was no effective coaching. But ironically, this individual is a very skilled coach. They have profound technical insight. So where's the bridge there? So I'm like, all right, clearly I need someone to communicate with me a little bit. But then there were other coaches who were very, very technical and had all sorts of insight and were word vomiting at me. Now, I'm guilty of this. And all of my athletes are like, that's you, Jennifer. Stop talking. Just say what you want me to do and walk away. But I did have that coach who had so much insight, and they pulled me out of the pool and had an entire conversation. It was like between 8 and 10 minutes of how long they were talking to me about all the things I could be doing differently. Great.
8 to 10 minutes of a 60-minute session.
Precisely. I get 2 60-minute sessions in a pool every week.
Yeah.
That was a large percentage of my training time. And so I don't want that in a coach, and I don't want to be that I don't want to take away your workout to make my point. So that's not it either. So ultimately, I'm looking for someone who can quickly build that relationship, help me feel like they see my potential and they want me to get there. And then I will believe anything they say. I'm kind of a sucker in that way. Right. You get me to believe that you have my best interest at heart, I will work so hard. So I'm definitely looking for that. I need that technical skill and knowledge base, but I need to be feeling seen.
Well, it's interesting you say that, right? During my level 1 seminar, one of the coaches there said something that was really profound. He said, you have to be able to coach the first time athlete, but you also have to be able to coach, if Rich Froning walks in your gym for a class, you have to be able to coach him too, because he's there to take a class. And if you're not going to coach him because he's Rich Froning, he's wasting his time. And I think that's important, being able to, as coaches, give feedback that is effective, but also efficient. Right. Sure. I do many times stay after class and chat with my athletes if they want to chat with me. But I think you can overdo it during class and say a little too much. We've talked about that in the past when it comes to trying to help people get technique down. If you tell them too many things at once, I think you told me this about foundation specifically. If you have someone who's new, who's learning something like, let's just say, an overhead squat or a snatch, these are technical movements. Giving them every single cue at once is going to give them none. They're going to get nothing out of it. Giving them one and then letting them get that one and then slowly build on it is going to be better. So I think, that's that's kind of funny, having that person who just robbed you of your time by telling you so much all at once.
So much. I'm very educated. I can't do any of it, but I'm very educated.
I know the things.
So as a athlete, taking it from your swim class into a CrossFit gym, what exactly do you look for? And I think it's interesting, your perspective as well, because you work with Andrea in your Olympic training too. So where does the scale land on your gradient of good versus effective on both? I mean, you're fortunate that some people like Keith are like right in the middle, but
oh yeah, it's true. No, it's true. Like I get such a blessed opportunity here with the coaches I'm surrounded with, right? You all have great personalities that can hang out with you guys all day. And that's important to me. I want to have fun with the coaches. Yes, I want them to deliver technical movements. I want them to help me advance. I want them to have a good eye. I want them to call me out when I'm sandbagging. There's a lot of things I want, but to your point, there's a reason that I've chosen Andrea as my coach, because she has the technical insight, but she's funny as all get out, right? We're doing a sport where you can get in your head a lot. I mean, it's you and that barbell, and you're trying to replicate sheer precision, same standard of movement over and over, despite whatever the crowd is doing or the music is or isn't playing or whatever you had for breakfast. Like, nothing matters. You have to do it exactly the same. You can get in your headspace and get very serious about that. You can get really bogged down when the numbers aren't there. You need someone that can keep it playful. They've got the delivery. They've got the knowledge base. They understand you as an athlete, but they also know how to just keep it fun.
And just for context, Andrea is your weightlifting coach.
She is my weightlifting coach. She was for years a member of our gym. Her mom is still a member of our gym. Her dad is a member of our gym. So she's very integrated in the community. Mm-hmm. She started in our teens program and has advanced to the point now where she was on Junior Team USA. So, I mean, this is a amazing human being that I get the privilege of working with.
Absolutely.
But her sense of humor is really the thing that gets me.
So clearly for you, that personable coach is very important. Keith, your perspective, what are you looking for in a coach?
As an athlete,
I'm expecting a very different answer.
Yeah, I swing completely the opposite direction. Like, I don't really care if I like you. Like, I'm coming to you for results, period. If you can't give me results, you're fired immediately. You know what I mean? Like, if I go through a whole 12-week cycle and I can't point at the needle moving on anything, which is very rare, at least there's usually a coach. For most coaches, you can at least move the needle somewhere. But if I go through, our first cycle together and like it's just not moving the needle in the areas where are my biggest limiting factors, then I can make that progress on my own. You know what I mean?
I think that's interesting what you just said about your 12-week cycle, because I was going to ask you about that specifically. Speaking to the athletes who are listening, who are thinking, hey, you know what? I'm more in Keith's wheelhouse. I want that. I want results. I want specific things. What kind of time frames should they be working with? Because a lot of them are going to want, a lot of us are going to want results immediately. And that's just not how it works.
Okay.
So what kind of expectations should we have when working with a coach to kind of gauge whether or not they are being as effective as they should be? I mean, everyone's going to be different. You know, if someone's working 4 hours a day versus 1 hour a day, they're going to have different results. But realistically speaking, just going off the barometer of 1 hour a day, 5 days a week, 6 days a week, we'll say, because we do have Saturdays.
Yeah.
6 days a week, that person who's coming in for an hour, who's really pushing themselves. You know, they may be we'll use a scaled athlete or a blue level athlete, you know, but they want to get to purple. They want to be able to come in and just do purple every single day consistently. What kind of time frame can they look at if they're working with their coach and doing everything right to really start seeing those results, that effectiveness?
Providing that they got through the interview process, because I would interview my own coaches. Like,
you interview?
Absolutely.
Oh no!
Absolutely.
You're way out of my league.
Absolutely. Provided that they get through that process, you do have to give it time. It's not a thing to where it's like, oh, okay, the first 2 weeks I'm not seeing what I want to see, you're fired. It would be probably 4 to 6 months, I would say, is enough time for you to tell if this coach is going to be able to deliver what they say they can deliver. And I'm not saying you need to go from 0 to amazing in 4 to 6 months. I'm saying that the progress, the trend that you should see in your data points should be moving in the right direction for how they say it's going to move in the right direction. So that's also a caveat too. You can't just be like, okay, I didn't make the progress I wanted to make in 4 months, so now you're fired. It's like, if they lay out the expectation, like, here's the plan, here's where you should be in 4 to 6 months. And then you go to that 4 to 6 months and you're only halfway to where they said you would be, or where they promised almost where you would be, then they're not delivering on their end.
You're speaking specifically about personal training, right?
In any regard, whether you're taking classes or personal training. Because if it's been almost a decade since I actually had to pay for a membership. But if I was going to a gym, there would be 2 things that I would want to know from the conversation with the owner. I would have to talk to the owner first. One, how long is your longest standing member, male or female? And then how long is your longest standing coach? Retention is going to matter more to me than like how fun the class is. Because if you're not retaining your members or you're not retaining your coaches, there's a reason for that. And usually the reason is something in the vicinity of they're not getting what they need from you.
That's interesting. I would feel like you'd be asking questions like, how many members do you have that are going to regionals or going to semifinals? That's the question that I think you would be after, if that's where your goals are, which they sound like. You sound pretty serious about this, bro.
In the past, I was very, very, very serious about it. But honestly, that to me, that doesn't gauge how well of a coach someone is and how well they can deliver on results. Unless you had like a plethora of people like going to semifinals. Like if you're Mayhem, then yeah, obviously you're on that next level of coaching. But just because you don't have anybody in your gym that has gone to a semifinals or gone to the games doesn't mean you're not capable of coaching that. But if you can't retain your members, that's where I see there's something missing. Either you're not personable and people are leaving, or you're not delivering results. Usually it's the results.
I'd be failing in my job if, as the general manager of Sweat Factory CrossFit, I didn't throw out that, we've been in business for over 10 years now. We have members who have been with us for the entire 10-year cycle. Shout out to y'all. You know who you are. Love you.
I would like to know how the interview went when Keith interviewed you guys to work for you.
I I still have a visual of him driving in his car during that interview Zoom call.
Actually, it was a Zoom call, and I had to pull into the parking lot of a gas station to finish the interview. So,
this is going to be a whole podcast on it.
To be continued.
So, going back to this, let's say Frankie comes up to you, Keith, as an athlete, and I say, all right, I saw Jason Grubb competing. He's an older athlete. I want to be like that guy. I don't necessarily want to get to the games, but let's just say I wanted to get to regionals. I want to be able to push myself that far. This year, I wasn't able to get anywhere. I was just a scaled athlete. How long would it take me if I just came to classes to get there? And it's okay to say you won't.
Honestly, that's the thought that came to my mind.
Yeah. We may start with just classes, but to get to a semifinals like level, you're probably not going to get there just doing classes. And if you did, either one, you were a former athlete who's just building on the vast foundation you already have, or it's going to take a very, very long time and your class programming is more towards the competition than it is health and longevity.
Okay. I think that's interesting. I don't want to go to regionals. Not yet.
Well, but lucky for you, we have a competition class starting September 9th, 7 to 9 a.m.
That is true.
I like that plug.
Speaking of that, is that going to be you doing the programming?
That will be me doing the programming for that. I'm really excited about it. I hope it provides all the value that I think it's going to provide. We're going to have some mobility in the class. We're going to have mindset training. It's really going to encompass all things competition, not just working out. Obviously, if we have competitors in our classes, the level of fitness in the class is going to be a little bit higher just because everybody's pushing that extra effort just to make sure that they're making gains. But it's not to say that everybody in there is going to be like a regionals athlete, or, we're not going to have just 12 Kurtz in there throwing down. Like, we're going to have everybody from beginner to masters to RX to intermediate, and we're all going to develop together. And I really like the concept of having a competition community because then, like I mentioned on other podcasts, it's really hard to do it by yourself unless you're one of those rare Tia Claire Toomeys or Matt Frasers or Rich Fronings. So having that community is really going to be able to push us all.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. I think what would you say is the overarching goal of that? Would it be just to get people who are trying to get into competitions, or is it more of like kind of like a 30-day abs type of deal where you want to get the most that you can out of a specific time frame?
Maybe a combination of both. In the regard that my main focus is to elevate people's skills, expose them to higher level skills, and maintain the concept of virtuosity or chasing excellence. Like, that for me is going to be my main goals. We actually have a staff meeting coming up about the overall, like, how it's going to look and be implemented on a day-to-day basis. But that would be my goal, is to make sure people understand the concept of virtuosity and that we're always chasing excellence as competitors. Like, it doesn't matter if you come first or 50th. We want that movement quality to be the standard. Like, the standard is the standard. Like, I don't care if you're last place, your handstand push-ups are going to look better than everybody else's there. Even if you're, a master's athlete, your goblet squats are going to look better than everybody else's there, whether you're coming first or fifth.
So just to be clear, this isn't one of those parts of the gradient where you're going to have, personable with people. This is going to be straight up skill building, all go, no show.
No, not at all. This is probably going to, the structure is going to allow us to build more relationships. And going back to Jen's point that she mentioned earlier about the community being able to support each other, so not needing the coach. my vision for that is to build a culture of service. Like, I don't want it to be a thing to where we're getting together and I'm doing competition training for me. Like, no, this is a team and we're going to act like a team. So if you finish the workout first, your reward for being fitter than everyone else is you get to help everyone put away their equipment. You know what I mean? Like, that type of service kind of allows you to lean on each other and build more of that community. My role in that is to dig a little bit deeper to what your actual goals are. I want to know what your fears are. I want to know what your 5-year plan looks like. I want to know why box jumps scare you above 16 inches. I want to know why you're scared of going upside down. So not that it's not going to be relationship building, but that the relationship building is going to look a little bit different. It's not going to be just jokes and laughs all the time. Like, we might be crying, hugging each other. You know what I mean? Like, to go a little bit deeper, I to progress you farther, I need to know you on a deeper level. It can't just be, we get together, crack some jokes, do some workouts, and then high five and go home.
I like that, man. I really do like that. That just gave me a whole different perspective on what it is. It really did. Now I have to sign up. And I definitely want to make sure I don't come in first.
Don't worry, you won't, because I'll be there.
Oh.
Shots fired.
Challenge accepted.
Maybe we should make number 2 put all the equipment away.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So, all right, a few more questions we had down that we wanted to shoot over to Jen. One of them is, what prompted you to get your level 2? You know that it's in my sights. I want to get my level 2 at some point. So tell us a little bit about what your experience was like getting level 2 and how it's changed you as a coach.
So getting my level 2 was simply because my level 1 ran out. After 5 years, you have to do something, right? And that's the true answer. But looking back, if I could have understood how much value the level 2 was going to provide to me and enhance my experience as a coach, I most certainly would have done it sooner. I didn't work with level 2s at the last gym that I was at. I didn't know what an example of one looked like. So I knew I'd get it someday.
Let me put a little asterisk next to that. How much more valuable is it for our athletes that you're a level 2?
I think it makes a really profound difference from their perspective. I look at how I ran a class as a level 1. I walked in, I went through the entire demo. I showed them what all the warm-up movements looked like. I showed them what all the workout movements looked like. It was like a 10-minute lecture. And they were cool with that because they didn't know any better. But now as a level 2, I'm getting in there, 3-minute whiteboard brief, 5 minutes if we're chatty. Then we immediately start moving. I'm going over the warm-up while we're doing the warm-up. I'm layering in progressions and drills. I'm trying to pick a certain technique for the day and put their focus on that, talk about it repeatedly throughout the warm-up of the general warm-up, the specific warm-up. So then when the workout starts, they're really ready for the workout. Whereas again, as a level 1 coach, I thought I was doing my job well enough. I didn't know.
Well, you were.
I mean, I was doing okay. I still have those 10-year members. What's up? But it's a much different experience. When I came back from the level 2, within my first 2 weeks, there were 6 different athletes who came up to me and said, that was the best class I've ever had. Because they hadn't seen it before either. And then now, you look at like Keith's class as a level 3 coach. I'm looking at him some days and I'm like, oh, I just want to be him when I grow up. And the more you learn and the more you learn how to apply that knowledge in a very simple way, that's the magic. You can have all the knowledge you want to, but if you can't simplify it to that athlete who just walked in the door for the first time, you're missing the mark entirely. And as that go into that level 2 is an incredibly humbling experience because you do these teach back moments where you're supposed to lead the class. And this is a class full of other people who are all level 1s or level 2s redoing it. You're leading these other amazing CrossFit athletes. I had a games athlete in my level 2 class. And you're thinking to yourself, how is this going to play out? I've never had this experience. Yes, she was taking the course.
Wow.
And so I'm like, all right. And yet still you're finding flaws in their movement pattern. They're smaller. They're not as pronounced as other athletes, but they're still there, right? Even coaches need coaches. I say that all the time.
Right.
And having that kind of humbling experience to be teaching these very knowledgeable people how to do a movement, and then have the red coat, the red shirt, have her tell you all the reasons you were terrible at it.
Do you remember any of the feedback that you got?
Oh, I talked too much. That's 100%. There was far too much in a progression that we should have gotten through it in the 3 to 5 minute range. She cut me off at the 6 minute range because I wasn't quite done yet. That was one of the biggest things. Mm-hmm. I haven't perfected that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I could do that.
But no, to that point, like, I think that is one of the most valuable things about the level 2 is the feedback that you get about your coaching. Just like you were able to rattle that off, I can still tell you everything about my level 2, all the feedback that I got. And I think a lot of people just don't understand how valuable that is. And that's why they don't get their level 2, is just because it's like, oh, it's just going to be more stuff that we learned in a level 1. And it's like, you're not wrong, but there's so much more value in it than that.
It's a whole nother layer of the experience, and having someone who cares about you, again, that seminar staff really jumped into it, made you feel like, I want you to be a better coach. Mm-hmm. And here's how you're going to do it. Mm-hmm. And seeing that makes you fired up to want to do your job better. And I see it in other coaches who they're okay. They're happy where they're at. But I think it would change their mindset and unlock a whole new potential if they had that instant feedback from someone that they valued and respected. Kind of looking to you, Keith, because like I get that luxury having you at the same gym that I'm at. I get to see you in action, and I usually have to ask you for it. You're polite enough not to be like, hey, that was trash. But there's times where I'm like, I feel like I missed the mark today. How would you have done this a little bit differently? And just creating that dialogue, in the end, it's going to make us all better coaches.
Absolutely. So you mentioned you want to be like him when you grow up. Do you have aaspirations to move into an L3, knowing now?
Yeah, what do I got? 4.5 years before my L2 expires? Hopefully it won't take me that long, but I do absolutely. Like, that's the next step in the progression. Like, I was a level white coach, now I'm a level yellow coach, I'm a level blue coach.
Nice. And Keith,
what's up?
L4?
Absolutely. Definitely not
anytime soon.
Well, I was going to say definitely not this year. I just passed my level 3 in January, so I studying and preparing and everything right now sounds a little daunting, knowing what I went through for the level 3. But within the next 2 years for sure. My original plan was to do it at the end of next year and give myself another year to prepare. That still might be the plan, depending on how life goes. But yeah, definitely after taking my level 3 and passing it, I can see the value there as well. Like Coach Ackerman always says, like the level 3 and the level 4 are a call to action. Like a lot of people, again, don't see the value in that because there's no seminar, but there's a ton of value in preparing for your level 3 and really understanding the methodology to a T. Like being able to quote what is fitness, you know what I mean? Really understanding the intensity lecture and the technique lecture and some of these concepts that kind of get missed or fall through the cracks when you take your level 1. Because like Clint always says, it's like drinking through a fire hose. Yeah. So yeah, level 4 is definitely happening. I'm going to need a little bit more time to prepare. That one is, the level 3 is scary. The level 4, you're literally coaching a class and you're having evaluators just stare at you, kind of like I do you guys with the clipboard. Yeah, same thing.
That's not uncomfortable at
all. So yeah, that one's a little nerve-wracking.
What would you say is the biggest jump? I know going from a level 1 coach to a level 2 coach, it's all about how you control your class and how you teach your class. What is the biggest difference between a level 2 coach and a level 3 coach?
Two differences. One, your breadth of knowledge. You have to know more to be able to coach that, to pass that test. And then two, being able to apply what you know in a practical sense, because the questions on the test, and I can't like recite any questions, but the questions on the test are going to be about practical application. It's not going to be like, do you know XYZ? It's like, okay, now that you know XYZ, how would you handle this? Or how would you handle that?
That's why you're always asking me those questions.
Yep.
Very nice.
Yep.
Well, we're coming to the end of the podcast. Thank you, Jen, for being with us. I do want everyone listening to know how much we care about you as athletes. And if you are in a gym with a coach who isn't one of us, or if you're in one with us, please let us know if you guys enjoy what we're doing, and let us know how much you care about us. Because believe it or not, as much as we care about you, about athletes, it means a lot to us as well to get feedback from you and know what we're doing is actually having a positive effect on your lives.
Absolutely. I love those compliments, and I have to give a shout out to Jeremy Hendricks. He came up to me on one day and was like, man, I really enjoy your classes. And anytime I come into class and you're coaching, like, I know it's going to be a good time. And that it made my whole month. Like, it really felt good.
Yeah, it can change our whole day around too, right? I mean, so thank you guys all for listening. Thank you, Jen, for being with us. I think this was a great podcast. Keith, you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Maybe we'll have her back someday.
Maybe.
Maybe I'll accept the invite. Maybe.
All right, everyone. Have a good one. Make sure you like and subscribe to our podcast. Share it with your friends.
Take care.
Bye.